welcome back to part 2 of our Income Shifting by the Numbers series. I'm your host, H. Cortez, the one and only financial health mentor, everybody's favorite fatherpreneur. And today's, in part 2, we're going to talk a little bit further about how you can put that tax savings to work for you. See, in part 1, we talked about the money that you are losing to taxes and how you can adjust your W-4 form. If you haven't checked that out, then I'm going to put a link to that below so you can go back to part 1 and check that out. But in this part, we're going to focus on putting that money to use for you and to work for you so you can get yourself out of debt. In addition, we're going to break down the power of the income shifting from a business standpoint, because our income shifting membership has a business attached to it, how you can write off your common expenses and further your tax savings, and how you can put all of that together to accelerate your debt elimination game plan. So without further ado, here's my good friend, Mr. Larry Haley, once again. Check it out.
We're off now. But we're not going to use that $300 to just go out and start, buying things and shopping and doing those type of things. That $300 got to go to work for us. We got to put that $300 to work. So now when we put that to work, we're going to put that into our debt elimination plan. So now with that extra $300 here, we're going to put $375 a month on that first credit card. Now we're going to pay that first credit card off in 8 months. It was going to take us 40 months to pay it off. Now we're going to pay that credit card off in 8 months with just that extra $300. And then we're going to roll that $375 into the next credit card. We're going to pay that off in 10 months, so on and so forth. And now we go from 19 years to get out of debt to 11 years. So we've shaved off 30 years of the time frame it was going to take us to get out of debt, simply because we're following a strategy, because we're doing a debt snowball, and that we're taking our money back from the government and using it to work for our benefit instead of loaning it to the government so that they can invest it and then they can benefit off of it, and then not even give it all back to us at tax time. So that's starting the process. That's starting the strategy. So now we're debt free in 11 years, and when we get debt free, now we have a cash flow of $18,600. That's the initial $15,000 plus the $3,600 that we took back from the government. So again, 2030 may not, seem close enough to you, but yet and still, you're talking about $153,000 that we're going to pay off in 11 years and be debt free. So that's just the beginning of the strategy. The next part of our strategy is our tax minimization strategy. So because our membership is also a business, now because it's a business, you get tax advantages that everyday employees don't get, which means that you can now write off household expenses. You can write off mileage. You can start writing off vacations. You can start writing off expenses for your children. You can write off up to 475 tax deductions because you simply have a business. And the law says all you need to do is legally attempt to make a profit for you to get those tax deductions. And so this is one of the biggest advantages to me of having a business, whether you make money in the business or not, no matter what your business is, whether you make a dime in your business or not, you got to understand that we leave a lot of money on the table as business owners, because I've talked to many business owners who don't know the tax laws, and they're leaving a lot of money on the table because they don't know the tax laws. And the reason why the tax laws are there for you as a business owner is because the government knows that businesses, particularly in their first 5 years, struggle. And so they give tax incentives, tax advantages to business owners that help them, deal with the losses that, of their, because they maybe not make enough money the first year, the second year, the third year. So now you can write off some of those expenses that you have to offset, not getting the income that you want to get. So we're just going to go over the 4 common tax deductions in this example. And that is car and truck expenses, house and communication expenses, travel, and wages for your children. So in this example, we're going to just, we're not going to say this person is going to do anything above normal than what they're normally doing. If this person normally drives a year, they drive, let's say, 14,000 miles a year. That's what they do every year on average, right? So for this example, I'm not going to write off 14,000 because it's not realistic for somebody to just get started and all of a sudden write off every mile that they drove. But I'm going to say, let's just say if we write off half of that. So we're going to write off 7,000 miles that, they're going to turn that into business miles. And so writing off half of that mileage that they're already driving is going to give them a $4,060 tax deduction, which at tax time is going to return to them roughly $1,015. Now, again, that's for illustration purposes. It could be more, it could be less, but that's approximately what they would get back just from writing off half of the mileage that they were already driving. This is why everyone should have a home-based business, because you got to understand there's money that we're leaving on the table because we just don't know any better. So now I'm driving my vehicle every day anyway. I'm going back and forth to work. I'm going wherever I go here and there. I just need to now, when I get to where I'm going, tell somebody about this membership. Tell somebody about the education that this membership provides. I need to get on the phone with somebody while I'm in the car on my way to work. I need to listen to some of my education, some of my training while I'm in the car, right? And so when you start to do those things, and you start to do those things naturally, then most of your mileage you can start writing off. And eventually, this person can actually end up probably writing off majority of that $14,000. But again, for this example, we just use half. The next expense is the home and communication expenses. So the way the home and communication expenses work is you're going to get whatever your office, the area that you call your office in your household. Whether you have a room or a section, whatever that square footage is that you use, that percentage of your entire household is what you get for your household expenses. So to make it easy math, let's say this person's house is 2,000 square feet, and they got a room that they use that's 400 square feet. Well, that's 20% of their entire household. So they're going to get a 20% tax deduction for their household expenses. So we're going to put 20% here. And now we're going to put our bills in. So now these bills that we have that we're paying every month, they now become tax deductible, right? We get tax deductions on those, and the government got to give us some money back simply for paying our own bills that we were paying already. So we're going to give them an average gas bill. Let's say their average gas bill is $100. Depending on where you live, you may or may not have a gas bill. You may or may not have a very high electric bill if you don't have gas. But for this example, we're going to just keep it, simple. They're going to have an average $100 a month electric bill. We're going to give them a $60 a month water bill. Cable bill, we're going to say they get a $200 a month cable bill, and that includes internet and phone. Cell phone, we're going to give them, let's say, a $160 a month cell phone bill. Now, if we were renting or leasing, we can write the rent or the lease off, but because we have a mortgage, we can't write the mortgage off, but we can write off the interest and insurance. And so that was a difference of $350. Our principal payment was $400, and our interest insurance is $350. And then we're going to give them let's say they have a home alarm that they pay $40 a month on. So all of that is tax deductible because they have a home-based business. So this is money that we were missing out on because we don't have a home-based business. But once you get a home-based business, you can write these expenses off, right? So that's $1,010 a month that we can write off. That's $12,120 a year, which gives us a $2,424 tax deduction, and that's an extra $606 that we get back at tax time by simply writing off expenses that we had before we had a home-based business, right? So now we're up to over $1,600 in just tax savings because we have a home-based business. So again, we're going through the strategy here. And so next up is another big one, is travel. So we're going to say this person is, fairly modest. Statistically, the average family spends between $3,000 and $5,000 a year on travel. So we're going to say, and I've met with people who have paid, who've spent $12,000 a year on travel. So we're going to say this person spends, we'll say $5,000 a year, and that's for them and their children. So they spend $5,000 a year on travel. That's another $1,250 that the government is giving them back at tax time, that if they did not have a business, they would not get that money back. So that's money being left on the table that we can't afford to leave behind. We already went over correcting the tax withholding, so we can't afford to let the government take that extra $300 a month, but we also on the back end can't afford to miss out on these tax deductions. Next up is wages for your children. Now, what that is you can write off up to $12,000 per child if you hire them in your business. Now, what does that mean? Well, you're already paying your children. You're already paying for their expenses. You're already taking care of them and doing things that you do for them monthly anyway. But when you have a business and you can hire them to work in your business, now all of those things that you were doing already becomes their pay for working in your business. So for this example, we're going to say this person has 2 children and they spend roughly $5,000 per child each year. So that's $10,000 a year in expenses for their children. And again, these are things that you were already taking care of anyway. You're already paying for their sports. You're already paying for their lunch and, a number of different things, paying for school, prom, homecoming, whatever it may be. You're already spending that money on them. And so now you can write that off. And the children must be between the ages of 7 and 17 to be able to do that. But once they are, you can hire them in your business and you can give them, it's a home-based business, so they're already cleaning up the house. That's part of keeping your home-based business clean. And there are a number of other things that you can do that you can give them tasks, and you write out their task every month. And so you would say, hey, each month I'm giving you $400, and your job for the $400 is to do this, and that. You lay it out. You're doing what they were already doing. You just now have it structured so that you can make sure that the government gives you money back. So again, $5,000 per child. That's $10,000 total. So that's another $2,500. So this person with 2 children was missing out on $2,500 because they didn't have a home-based business that they can hire their own children in. This is why it's significant to have a business, because when we don't have a business to hire our own children in, and we send them off to go work for McDonald's and Burger King and you name it, well, those companies get that tax deduction because we don't have a business to hire our own children in. And those companies are going to get that same tax deduction up to $12,000 per employee. So now we are down to, we've been able to save or recover that we were missing out on $5,371 in tax savings that we were missing out on. This person, before they had a business, had all of these same expenses. They still traveled and spent $5,000 a year. They still spent $10,000 a year on their children. They still had these same expenses. They still drove 14,000 miles a year. And so now, because they simply have a home-based business, it's simply worth an extra $5,371 for them. Now, what could you do with an extra $5,000 a year? You don't even have to work for this. What you do, you have to attempt, like I said, legally attempt to make a profit, but you're not required to make a profit, right? But, if you're legally attempted to make a profit, you probably will. But for the sake of this example, we're going to say you don't. You haven't made a profit. You're just simply writing these things off. And again, this is money that we're missing out on every year. And it's particularly important now with the tax law changes because many people who are used to getting large tax returns are no longer getting those large tax returns. And many people depended on those large tax returns so they can actually pay their bills down or shop or do whatever. So when we get this tax return back, we're not going to go and blow it. We're not going to go for the tax time sales or anything like that. We're going to actually put this money into our debt elimination plan. So we knocked our debt down. We were knocking it down. We got it down to, I believe, 11 years. And so now with this extra money, we're down to 8 years. So $153,000, we pay that off in 8 years because we corrected our tax withholding and brought back $300. And we wrote off our expenses and brought back another $447 every month. So a total of $747. We're going to start using that money now and put that towards the credit card, then roll that to the next credit card, to the car, and so on and so forth. So now we paid off $153,000 in 8 years simply by using strategy. And again, we have not made a dime in the business. So obviously, if we did, we could actually do this even faster.
Oh man, listen, if you ain't fired up, if you ain't excited about your financial future based on the ability to add an income shifting membership and get yourself out of debt in 8 years, I don't know what else to tell you, man. I don't know what else to say. Well, in fact, I do, man. If you haven't seen enough yet, then continue on to part 3, where we're going to start talking a little bit about how that money that you just saved from taxes and getting yourself out of debt, what that looks like if you start investing that money and growing your retirement portfolio. We're going to talk about that in part number 3, man. So go ahead and continue to that part.